Chapter 2. Assets and Liabilities. It's likely that few of us were taught financial literacy growing up. We may have learned about history and science in school, but not about taxes, for example. But without financial literacy, it's virtually impossible to become wealthy, no matter how smart or talented you are. Thus, Kiyosaki believes increasing financial literacy is the first step to becoming rich. The biggest lesson of financial literacy is simple. Understand the difference between an asset and a liability, and then buy assets. The difference between an asset and a liability. An asset puts money into your pocket. It generates income. Liability takes money out of your pocket. It generates expenses. This lesson may seem obvious, but in reality, many individuals don't know the difference between a liability and an asset. Rich people acquire assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets. For example, most people think buying a nicer house is acquiring an asset. Kiyosaki doesn't agree. He says, most people work all their lives paying for a home they never own, and that isn't guaranteed to go up in value. And if all your money is tied up in a 30-year mortgage, you won't have the funds to buy other assets or time to grow their value. If we think of our definitions, a house, therefore, can be a liability. It takes money out of your pocket without putting anything back in. We can see how assets and liabilities work in practice by comparing the cash flows of low, middle, and high-income families. Every family has expenses like food, housing, and transportation. Families with little income use it to pay for these expenses. Middle-class families with more income tend to spend it on liabilities, like a mortgage, that generate more expenses, like mortgage payments. Now, if we consider rich families' cash flow, we see a notable difference. They put their money into assets. For instance, instead of a house with a mortgage, they might acquire a rental property that generates income in the form of rent. Or they might buy other income-generating assets like stocks and bonds. This money goes back into their pockets and funds their liabilities. According to Kiyosaki, the main obstacle to becoming wealthy isn't how much money we have. It's how we use it. Thus, if people with even limited income focus on putting money into assets as soon as possible, they too can accrue wealth. To build wealth, spend money on assets that generate income rather than on liabilities. It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep.